So welcome to the Excited to Fly panel. This challenge is all about how we can make it exciting to fly again, and what future enabling products and technologies may help us get there. So I'm William McClintock, Strategy Manager and the host for this session. I'd also like to introduce our amazing panel. So thank you very much to them all for joining. We'll introduce themselves properly shortly, but just to summarise, we have Martin Derbyshire, who's the CEO at Tangerine. We have Ben Orson, who is the founder and managing director at Orson Associates. We have James Park, hopefully on the line, who's the founder and principal at JPA Design. We have Alan Leeks, who's the VP for fleet planning at Virgin Atlantic. And then we have Craig Lawson, who's an aircraft systems design expert and senior lecturer at Cranfield University. So do we have everyone on the line? I don't think I've heard James Park just yet.
You should have me now.
We do, excellent. Have you got your video turned on?
Yes, I have.
Okay. So, well, I can't see you at the moment, but hopefully we'll bring you to the. If the audience can pin the panelists to the front, that might help. I'm not sure I can do it for you.
Well, the camera's switched on, the mic is switched on, and I can see everyone.
Oh, there we are. You've come up now.
Okay.
Excellent.
Good.
Okay, so I'm just going to share the mural board that we have. So I'll share that in a second. Okay, so we have people inputting on the mural board already, which is great. So basically we have all of our challenges listed here, which hopefully I've socialized before and everyone's familiar. It's very easy to use. Just double click and put a post-it and start typing. We'd like your company's name, current capabilities on the left, company name and future ambitions on the right. So, and try and stick to the ones relevant to each of the challenges. Hopefully they're relatively self-explanatory, and we'll talk about them more in a second. But yeah, so without further ado, I think we shall move on to our panelists who can introduce themselves. So we will start with Martin, as he's the person I can see at the moment. So a short introduction and any insight you want to provide on these challenges from the off.
I will. Thanks for the introduction. Hopefully some of you will have seen me speak in the earlier session today, although I had a little technical glitch. I'm the CEO of Tangerine and have been working in the aircraft interior sector for over 20 years. We like to deliver groundbreaking innovation where we can, spanning the whole of the customer experience. And I believe the UK supply chain can add significantly to innovation across the world. We should be proud of what we've done, but we've got a long way to go, particularly responding to COVID and also really trying to solve the issues that prevent innovation from happening as quickly as we would like. That's me.
Great, thank you very much, Martin. And then next on my list is Ben Orson.
Yeah, hi everyone. So again, thank you, Will. Thank you, the ATI, for inviting me to be part of this. Very pleased to be here. Yeah, my name's Ben Orson. I'm the founder and the MD of Orson Associates. We're a newly formed design agency specialising in the aviation sector. The company was founded by myself and a couple of long-standing friends and colleagues of mine who have a passion for meaningful innovation and for flight as well. We've offices in London, but we work with companies around the world. And over the past sort of 20 years that I've been in the industry, we've worked with airlines, airframe manufacturers and cabin equipment suppliers, so companies like Cathay, Air France, JAL, Safran and a whole bunch of others. Here to be supporting this initiative today. I'm still as excited about flying as I ever was, and hopefully we can find new ways to reignite that excitement for everybody when we come out of the problems that we've had around COVID. So yeah, that's me. Looking forward to a good session with you all. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ben. Yeah, and I realised that I think James mentioned before that the challenges don't sound that exciting, but if we can achieve them all, I think we can agree that it will be a very exciting experience and a comfortable one too.
Absolutely.
So then we have James Park, who's the founder and principal at JPA Design. Have we got James? He looks slightly frozen at the moment.
Muted, I think.
Oh, we can see you now, James. Yourself? Oh, slightly muted. We can't hear you at the minute. Is there a slight issue with your microphone? So while we wait for James, we've got Alan Leeks from Virgin Atlantic.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Will, for inviting me to participate in this really interesting event. I've been with Virgin Atlantic now for the best part of 17 years, looking after all matters fleet, so responsible for the planning of the fleet, all the aircraft campaigns to bring in new aircraft, negotiate contracts, sell aircraft, and also finance and lease where we need to as well. So one of the things that I've always been struck with at Virgin is, you know, we like to be at the leading edge of innovation in our cabins and really want to give our customers the best possible experience. But it's really important that the whole picture is considered. We need reliable products, and we need products that stand up to the test of time and use in service. So really pleased to be part of this, and I think the UK has got a fantastic support base to the aviation industry. We don't have our own airframe manufacturer, but we have a lot of second level manufacturing, and we've got a really sound base in the cabin industry as well. So it's great to think that we can build on this and maintain and expand our position as real experts and leaders in this particular field.
Thank you very much, Alan. Cheers. So we have Craig Lawson.
Good afternoon, Will. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks very much for inviting me to this event, Will. So I've been working in research and teaching at Cranfield University in the Aircraft Design Centre for 17 years. On Monday it will be. So I'm a bit of an outlier here as an academic rather than an industrialist. And my research interest is in novel systems being integrated onto the aircraft and assessing how that can be achieved through design methods, and assessing the impact that those novel technologies have on the aircraft as a whole, including its operation. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have James' microphone working yet? No, not just. If you could try closing the meeting and joining again. That might help. Also, you can try calling Anne if you have or emailing Anne with your number, and she'll be able to help. Okay, so while we wait for James to get back, we have some questions in Slido which I can kick off with. So the first question at the top is, what opportunities do we see for passenger experience tech resulting from the shift between long haul to long haul narrow body aircraft? That makes sense. So we're seeing a shift towards narrow bodies delivering long haul missions. Is there an opportunity for technology, for excited to fly type technology in that respect? Anyone like to jump in with that one?
Right. Can I start, Will?
Yeah.
I do think there's a plethora of design agencies trying to find new lie flat solutions for seating in this market. And I guess the interesting aspect of it is how do you get something which is right for what could be essentially be a 6 or 7 hour flight. So there's huge changes between day and night flights, which is certainly going to drive what the passengers choose and what they want to have. But I think also the other really important dimension is, can you deliver an appropriate IFE solution? Because IFE solutions have typically been as expensive as seating in some cases, and I think to enable smaller airlines or airlines with smaller fleets, then we need to try and discover solutions that can be implemented relatively quickly and without the significant costs that exist for the major players. Yeah. Of course, airlines have huge problems in then integrating across systems, and if they have a loyalty to one IFE supplier across their fleet, switching to others can be quite challenging for them. But so there are commercial barriers as well, not just technology barriers.
Great. Thank you, Martin. Anyone else have anything to jump in on?
Martin covered a lot of the big points there. I think as an airline, you mentioned the consistency across suppliers. I think we're more concerned about consistency of our product offering. We can't always bring the same suppliers to, we order a new fleet. We want to configure the new fleet of aircraft as best we can within the budget we've got and the time we've got to configure the aircraft before they deliver. So if we've got to switch IFE from one manufacturer to another, or seat product from one manufacturer to another, that's just part and parcel of it. But what we really want to offer is a consistent offering across all fleets. So we'd want to try and offer the same long-haul products, upper class, premium and economy. But it's quite constraining in a narrow-body aircraft. There's a very limited space compared to a wide-body, just looking at the circumference of the fuselage and all that goes with that. And then the other part of it is weight, and the aircraft is very finely tuned. They are able to do these long missions because they are making the most of the performance available. And as you start putting weight on, there are already trades with a number of passengers that you can carry on a narrow body aircraft on a 7 or 8 hour mission. So if you start adding weight through the product and service you want to offer, that could mean there's less capability to make the revenue, and quickly undermine the business model for actually operating in the first place.
There's also there's quite a big perception challenge the airlines have, because if you're taking a wide body aircraft off a particular route and replacing that with a single aisle aircraft, I think from a lot of passengers' points of view, although I suppose you may get a newer aircraft, there's a sense that the offer is being downgraded with that smaller plane, and often you'll struggle to create that experience on board the smaller one that's akin to what was missing on the larger one. So I think it's from the get-go you're against quite a big challenge in that respect.
Yeah.
Yes, it makes one consider or think back to what it was like traveling in business class on the old 747 on the upper deck. I can imagine that what Ben's talking about would be somewhat similar to that if you translate what we're doing at the moment into a narrow-bodied plane. Not necessarily a bad thing, and I'm sure that design can do a lot to ameliorate some of the issues, but nonetheless, I think people's expectations may need to change in the medium term until such times we have different kinds of aircraft and different fuselage configurations. These things could take a long time to come through the pipeline, but I suspect that is ultimately where it's going. We already talked or heard about materials and what's happening in the materials world. There are other materials that haven't been mentioned yet, such as graphene, which, if and when they do become more mainstream, then that will have a huge impact on the way aircraft are assembled, and could change the geometry of a fuselage, which in turn can change the way the seating configuration can be arranged. But I think in the short to medium term, excuse me, I think there will be quite a lot of compromise, both in terms of the passenger expectations and the operations that are offered.
Great, thank you very much, James, and great to have you on board.
Thank you.
Yeah, following on from that, I think in the slightly longer term, we can see some technologies that might help with a transition from wide body to narrow body and maintain the passenger satisfaction and expectations. Some that come to mind include lighting and display technologies, which will be able to offer the sense of space that might enhance the narrow body experience. Another thing that comes to mind is in the IFE, which is obviously more a wide body long haul product. This might be an opportunity to accelerate a move towards a bring your own device solution that we can see in the automotive world, moving to Android Auto and Apple Play. This is something that could enable a touchless experience and also bring IFE in a lower mass solution.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I guess that brings me neatly onto another point, which is one of the challenges around matching IFE and connectivity to what we expect in the real world. So where do you think are the real opportunities in there from your different perspectives to bring that kind of entertainment system across the board to match what we might expect?
I think I'll just jump in. I think there's, IFE, integrated IFE, as we've kind of become used to it, has been struggling, well, not struggling to justify itself, but, it's been under against some stiffer and stiffer competition from the equipment that passengers can bring on board. And for me, at least, a lot of the appeal of the integrated systems was that once if you took a long haul flight from somewhere, you would have access to a huge catalogue of new content. And I think with the rise of services like Netflix and others that are enabling you to download the content, a good spread of content domestically anyway, and the fact that a lot of one of the Disney studios, I think it was, released their latest movie straight to people's own domestic channels, then that sort of content advantage has eroded again. So for me, it's becoming more and more challenging to see how embedded IFE, those areas of competition are being eroded. And again, the technology that is emerging in people's own devices. I think Apple launched a new phone in the last couple of days that's got a LiDAR scanner, which is kind of paving the way for, much more engaging and exciting VR and AR tech. It feels like we need to kind of have a sort of fairly fundamental rethink about what the sort of digital experience on board aircraft is and how it's going to add value over and above what people can just bring with themselves.
Great, thanks, Ben. Anyone else have anything to say on potential for IFE, maybe in short haul? Is there room for that? Or
well, I had my microphone on and started talking. I mean, I think the other dimension to there is that the passenger will want to ideally mimic on board the aircraft what they carry with them or what they have in their car, and they'll want seamless integration, frictionlessness wherever possible. But at the same time, if the airline is smart, they can utilize that technology to really enhance the customer experience, to personalize the customer experience in an appropriate way, assuming that they can supply stuff in an effective way. You'd be really disappointed if you try and book something and then don't get it. So I think everybody's got to think very carefully about what's being integrated, how quickly, and can you actually deliver against those things. But inevitably, customers are going to expect to receive it. I mean, initially, it may be more about content and having, the content chosen for you, or recommendations that you might get for the videos that you've watched, or quicker access to. But ultimately, it must be on to mimic. Get as close as it can to what people have in their pocket and what people have in their car. The issue there is who's going to be able to deliver that. So I mentioned the link between LG and Lufthansa Technik on my talk. It'll be interesting to see what AirQ can deliver and what the uptake of their system might be, assuming they can get wide adoption. And they're promising an open system like iTunes, where people can freely develop apps of their own and therefore can overcome some of the real hurdles of legacy systems and license paying to those who provide those systems. So I think we're just at the beginning of that change beginning to emerge in the market. Whether it's different between single aisle and twin aisle aircraft, I'm not so sure. I think still the end goal is if you can deliver a seamless experience and to make that experience be as personal as possible.
Yeah, interesting. I think that one of the interesting points is that the aviation industry appears to be quite slow to adopt new technology and to make it available to passengers. But that seems to be a condition that's linked entirely to the certification process and quite reasonably safety issues. And so as a result, we've seen a very slow progress in IFE, although it's improving very quickly now, or quicker. I think because you're flying in a vehicle that's thousands of feet above the surface of the Earth and not in a car or a house, the safety issues will continue, and those processes will probably remain the same, if not get more rigorous. So how do we actually speed up the transition and improvement of IFE in aircraft? I think that it's an awkward situation, but definitely happening, and let's hope that it accelerates.
Thank you, James.
I think there's also a bit of an issue of who owns the digital space, because the experience of using the IFE systems that we have at the moment is to some extent a reflection of the brand that carries you. So the skins, the kind of visual identity of that, and also the curation of the content reflects, who you're flying with, where you're flying to, and that's always been, I think, one of the pleasures of travel, is you might come across something that was unexpected and of interest and stays with you. If you the kind of notion of seamless integration and automating the choice, it could point us towards a situation where you're basically sort of seeing a whole lot of fairly predictable content, and also handing over that identity of the digital space to companies like Apple and Google. And that would be a bit of an erosion of what makes flying exciting and special, is this opportunity to have a particular experience that you can't get anywhere else. And I think this is something the automotive sector is already struggling with a little bit as they integrate Apple and Google systems and others into their space. It's interesting space.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, so we've talked about, I guess, offering automatically personalized passenger experience, and also the kind of challenges around IFE and connectivity, and what changes we might want to drive there. But because I also, sorry, before I move on, did Alan, you want to say anything on that? I saw you turn your microphone off.
Yes, I would like to chip in. Just on the previous question about narrow bodies, I think there's an important point to make here. It's not always a comparison with the wide body. The kind of missions that airlines are looking to introduce, longer haul narrow body missions, are more unique and for growth on routes that don't have the traffic volumes that would support a wide body. So I do think we need to bear that in mind as well, that it's just not a straightforward comparison, and there's room for it, and there's room for compromise on the product as well, because it's either that or nothing. The wide body is not likely to be sustainable on those networks that the narrow bodies are going to be or are being deployed on.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Yeah, absolutely. We did actually do a project with American, which involved putting all business class seats into a narrow body plane. Immensely successful for them commercially, at least initially. And actually a good environment, fewer people, even though you are in a smaller volume, but it was a pleasant experience to be in it, and quite different from a normal wide-bodied business class cabin.
Yeah, and if it goes direct and you don't have to go and change flights at Heathrow or Paris or somewhere, then it's obviously more appealing.
Absolutely.
And then on the IFE, I think we are seeing good developments that allow airlines to grade more quickly. So the old configuration used to be quite a big head end that invested a good few $1 million, and you didn't have the flexibility, and you were stuck with the technology that was in it. Difficult to upgrade, expensive to replace. Some of the newer configurations are a lower upfront investment, but the upgradability of the system is far superior.
Yeah.
So that is a feature that we as an airline love, and that absolutely made a key. It was the key element in a decision to switch away from what you would call the traditional IFE manufacturers and go to something a little bit newer and more aggressive. But we still weren't bold enough to take IFE off. I think Ben raised some very good points about airlines and what's customarily expected on certain routes. And I think you've got to remember that not everyone's really well organized and got all their personal devices ready to go films downloaded and all the rest of it. And for those that aren't as techie, there would be very little to fall back on if you remove the systems completely. So it's one of these things that will probably change over time. And I think in the younger gens, there's this expectation that there's going to be free Wi-Fi everywhere, but that's always going to be a challenge at 36,000 feet.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. Okay, so we've talked about IFE. I wanted to move across into that kind of passenger environment and comfort and noise. So what are the kind of major challenges and potentially opportunities that you see in trying to reduce controllable cabin noise, and what do you think's potentially created that?
I think it's a really interesting area. I think it's so far proved to be quite difficult as well. However, there is good technology available that could be adapted into aircraft that would help by swamping the cabin with active noise control. You end up with an environment that is possibly too quiet, in as much as you then hear everything that's happening in the cabin, whether it's people snoring or talking or whatever. And that's quite disturbing as well, especially in a wide-bodied aircraft that's full and full capacity. There are things that we've advanced at various points since the early days of the 747 work we did with Singapore Airlines, when we were looking at directional sound, which seemed to work extremely well. And that's so you have directional sound control, not only projecting the audio, but without headphones, but also muting all the sort of exterior background noise as well. But so far, it has not been adapted into each seat. It's certainly something you could easily do in business and first class, but much more difficult in economy. But those are just some of the issues, just scraping the surface of the problem. But it's tiring. A lot of jet noise, a lot of wind rush, and the sort of that coupled with the air conditioning systems and so on. I think that's one of the reasons that long haul flight is so exhausting.
Yeah, thank you, James. So, Craig, did you have anything from research that you've done on kind of new technologies that are just coming through academia and into industry being developed?
Yeah, maybe looking a bit further out than the stuff James was talking about, there's graphene speakers coming along that might make it more feasible to integrate noise cancelling tech appropriately into economy class as well. But that's quite a few years away at the moment, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. Alan, from your experience on an airline, what do you think are the main factors in noise and making a great passenger experience?
I pretty much agree with everything that James said. I think the one thing I would add is that the cabin environment and the technology that the manufacturers have brought, Boeing with the 787, they've done a very good job in creating a quiet aircraft. And not only that, the huge improvements in the cabin pressure and air conditioning are far more friendly to long haul travel. And it's very difficult to measure it, but I think it's more anecdotal. I always seem to feel better when I've been on a long haul flight on a 787 or indeed an A350. And the A350 is unbelievably quiet, unbelievably quiet. And I think all the issues that James brings to bear about background noise, that is far more intrusive now than the actual aircraft itself. It's an amazing experience. So I think we've got to remember, that the background canvas has moved with those new technologies very, very significantly.
Thanks, Alan. Martin or Ben, did you have anything you wanted to add from that perspective?
Well, I think it's a key issue. I mean, I'm sure design consultancies have been talking about it for years, though, but nobody's, we've all experimented with directional sound. We've all tried to make it work, but never really found a means of making it work in the environment. I guess in the first class space, where airlines are moving to ceiling height suites where they can control the local noise and can provide not having to wear headphones or noise cancelling headphones, that certainly provides a much more kind of luxury and premium type experience. And I do think it is a critical dimension. Getting those basics right really transform the quality of the experience if you can achieve it. I'm not familiar with new technologies that will deliver that. All I know is that when we try to do it, we get lots of promises and we get a demo of something, but we never quite find the thing that really works. So it will be good to get to the thing that really works. I have seen an interesting thing in Japan with a neck system that you wear with speakers that are directional. And that was much, much more successful at delivering local sound that worked, but it was more ambient. And that potentially, I think, is another dimension to this. If you can add ambient sounds to help you relax, or the use of coloured light, you know, those things can also really improve relaxation and help you. And they have an impact on you and your mentality and your mental state. And we should certainly look at them. But of course, you know, weight and cost and practicality of delivery and security and many other issues that do exist have got to be overcome in sensible ways.
Okay. Thanks, Martin. Oh, Ben, you're muted.
Just a sort of small addition to that point, really. But if you think about, certainly in the premium cabins, the experiences that we try to create, so, you know, sleeping, dining, watching a movie, and if you think about the ideals of those experiences that you experience not on a plane, sound is such a huge component of those to your kind of enjoyment of those activities and making them pleasant. It seems that, you know, in all the time that I've been sort of working in cabin interiors, sort of best part of 20 years, the sound aspect has received very little attention, and it just feels like, you know, it's an obvious sort of area of, you know, you'd hope low-hanging fruit. I mean, maybe it's a little bit more technically challenging than I'm anticipating, but lots of other areas of the experiential aspects of being within a cabin seem to get a lot more attention.
Okay. Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, I could follow on from that. There's one issue is privacy. I mean, personally, I like the hum of the engine in the background, and as mentioned, modern aircraft are very quiet, the A380-2. But there's an issue with privacy, especially working with the Japanese on their requirements. They were very concerned about disturbing people and having conversations overheard and so on. So there's some technology in labs. At MIT have got some tech called a conversation shield, but you know that's algorithm based, but it relies on microphones and speakers. So it's not clear how low hanging that is going to be to integrate into the cabin, but certainly something that could be explored further as an opportunity.
Thanks, Craig. So I think we have a slightly interesting question here that I wanted to move on to about how airlines might move to a short-term retrofit solutions to upgrade their IFE systems, or whether they'll be looking at more costly new long-term installations as a preference in post-COVID times. So what are you kind of seeing from the people you're talking to?
You want me to make a start on that?
Yeah,
one?
I guess so.
So we like to think that, you know, with our new aircraft, we've chosen wisely. So the 350 and the 787 have got the latest products on. The A330-300 fleet that we operate had the latest and greatest at the time, but that's probably the product that's going to get the next set of attention if we need to upgrade that before we retire it. The problem we have really is not just of the IFE, it's the distribution into the seats and the seat back screens. And if we want to upgrade those screens, that can be done, but the penalty often with that is that the new screen is not certified in the old seat, and you can quickly precipitate a situation where you think you can do a quick upgrade to the IFE, but in practice what happens is you end up completely reconfiguring the cabin with new IFE and new seats. So it's not a very easy pick and mix solution at the moment, and if it were, it would be a lot easier to proceed. And that goes back to what I was saying previously with the system we have on the A350, which is a much lighter head-end control system, and the elements of the system are individually more able to be upgraded at a reasonable cost. And I think that's the direction that we need to go until we get more confident about taking IFE off completely.
I wonder if we're near a point where, I mean, certainly a lot of the business class seats that I've looked at over the past few years, you know, there's question marks over whether making the screen any bigger really adds value. They've already got to a certain point where they're pretty big. And, you know, we've had feedback from airlines to say, we're a bit concerned this is too big because my passengers are having to kind of move their head left to right to see across the screen. Within economy class, I mean, screens are growing and growing and growing. I guess there's going to be a point where, you know, there's not enough real estate to support a big screen. So is there perhaps an opportunity once we get to, you know, the limits just imposed by the physical size of the seats or the kind of field division of people, whereby you know, those screens can have a longer life on the aircraft, but maybe the other elements of the systems can be more flexible and more easily upgraded?
Thank you. So we're getting a few questions about COVID, and I know there's another panel about biosafe technologies and how we do that, but I thought maybe we could address it from an excited to fly point of view here, and how you guys think that the industry might kind of bring about new technologies to help restore confidence to fly and enthusiasm to fly from that perspective.
Gosh.
I mean, I think a lot of airlines have done a lot of work already in terms of trying to reassure passengers. I mean, I think, you know, pre-board testing or post-departure testing is important, because I think this is the journey is more than just the aircraft. I think from speaking to airlines about this, still one of the trickiest parts for them is controlling passenger behaviour. And, you know, one of the big airlines we spoke to recently is saying one of their huge challenges is that, you know, people really extend the period of time that they're eating because they don't want to wear a mask for the duration of a 9 or 10 hour flight. So I think many of the challenges are around the personal interaction between the crew and how well they can deal with that, or, you know, the way in which other passengers react when fellow passengers aren't behaving in the way that they should be behaving. So it's a really tricky issue. The technology issues around cleaning and such like, obviously they're a headache for the airlines, and they slow down turnaround times. But hopefully many of the issues, we will have a vaccine within a reasonable period of time, or we will be able to fly with greater safety within a reasonable period of time. That I still don't see really fundamental changes being made to seating or fabrics or such like necessarily, but I think airlines will give consideration to next generation seating or longer term solutions and touchless wherever possible, because obviously they want to safeguard themselves against this happening again, but with, you know, COVID-20, not COVID-19 or whatever.
Yeah, I think a lot of the things that are being put forward in today's discussion are, a lot of them, not all of them, are things that should have been done anyway. And so now perhaps this situation is kick-starting a slightly different approach, or a very different approach, which has to be in many ways a good thing. I also think that although there's a lot of apprehension at the moment about flying, there is also a great pressure building where people are desperate to actually go and either do business in other countries or to go on holiday. And I suspect that once we are talking about post-COVID here, once the COVID thing has fizzled out, that the risks are perceived as small, the business will come back very quickly. And that will have to be serviced by a smaller number of airlines. So that could be quite interesting, but let's see what happens. Otherwise, it's very difficult to answer the question, actually.
Thanks, James.
I thought Ben Patel's point that domestic travel in China was almost back up to pre-COVID levels was quite telling. I mean, clearly there will have been some operational changes on board, but I don't think, you know, any significant changes to the hard product would have been possible in that time frame. So my guess is that you know, pathogen resistance or ease of dealing with it on board will be one of the factors. I mean, it's always been to some extent a consideration. You know, people have been selling products that will deal with this sort of thing, antimicrobial surface coatings, that sort of thing, for a long time now. I guess we'll just ratchet that up the level of priority relative to other things for the next few years.
But I think what we're finding is people definitely do want to fly, but it's not the flight that's the problem. It's getting to the airport and the airport itself. I think once customers are arriving on board and they've been subject to a certain degree of testing, temperature monitoring, and all the rest of it, they feel more secure when they're on board, and the aircraft environment and air conditioning is known to be a lot safer than almost any condition apart from being completely outdoors and away from people. But the other dimension is the great uncertainty that governments introduce by applying different rules and quarantining rules and changing rules. And I think it's that uncertainty that really prevents people from making their usual decisions to travel. So I think we need to bear that in mind. I think fundamentally, if there's a piece that needs attention immediately, it's not actually the aircraft or the aircraft environment itself, it's getting to and from and the rules around it.
I think there's also always been a proportion of the population that's put off flying. We know this just due to the sheer rigmarole of getting to the airport and getting through those processes before you get on board the aircraft. And if we don't sort of manage this care, and that becomes even more onerous for people, I think there's going to be an increasing chunk of the population that really would much prefer not to fly.
Yeah. Thanks very much, everyone. So without going down that rabbit hole, we'll save that for the BioSafe challenge, but I think that's covered that topic very well from this perspective. Thank you very much. So lastly, I just wanted to cover the comfort side of things, and if we might focus on the maybe low-cost carrier or single aisle economy class aspect and how we can increase comfort for those passengers. Open-ended question.
Well, I would say that making the seat more comfortable is a priority, as we're talking exclusively about the plane. And looking at the majority of seat cushions that are available and the related safety issues that were to do with catapulting and so on, I have to say that I'm yet to sit in a very comfortable aviation seat in any class. And although the bed arrangements are often better. And I think the work that Martin appears to be doing is interesting. This is also an area where new materials will make a lot of difference if they're more responsive to the shapes and weights of people that are applied on them, and that they then recover to a standard shape once that person has left the seat. So cushions that are lighter, thinner, more responsive, and breathe more easily than the ones that we see at the moment. That's a small component of the whole thing, but it will make an enormous difference to the comfort levels of any kind of seat in a narrow-bodied aircraft.
And well, our project, and James, our project is very much about looking to try and deliver a retrofit solution. Whether it will work where we have a fixed seat pan and a limited recline for short haul, it's challenging to know. Initially is to look at long haul and whether we can increase recline and overcome the slouch problem that you have when you slide further down into the seat and therefore lose support to your back. So we are exploring to try and find out whether we can interlink membranes together with flexible structure to try and replace lumps of foam and the weight of lumps of foam with something that will give better ergonomic support, and it will also potentially grip you and hold you rather than just let your body drape between the seat back and the seat pan without support. What is challenging here, though, is an economy seat is a commodity. There are 3 main players in the world who own 90% of the market. The product is broadly the same from one to another. It's incredibly difficult, even if you do in-depth comfort studies, to determine high levels of difference in comfort between one product and another. And when you talk to the market about their experience of many of those products, many of them have gone down in weight, but their reliability has decreased, and they're seeing passengers saying, well, they're not as comfortable as the old seats we used to have. So it will be interesting to see what happens in that market and whether there is a shift to change. There's definitely room using composite technology to take weight out of seat backs, for example. But also at the same time, like with a lot of airline seats, they're kind of being designed as a structure to overcome a dynamic test. They're not being designed as a comfort system that you can attach to an aircraft in an appropriate way. And so it's very much about adopting a more holistic solution, and finding, I guess, smarter ways to get through the challenges of certification at the same time as finding interesting methods that may let you improve comfort in what essentially is a very tight space anyway.
Thanks, Martin.
Yeah, the impression that I got from being fairly close to Safran's, shouldn't name names here, I suspect it applies across the board, was that innovation within the economy seat market, certainly from coming from the vendors, was really driven by changes to the structure as opposed to changes to the way that structure supported people. So yeah, I think that kind of echoes what's been said before.
Well, I mean, Craig has. There's been some work on that we've seen in our earlier study about kind of aerogels and advanced foams and comfort systems like that. Where do you see them coming in?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what's been said before. It should be a priority. The economy class seat is going to have the biggest impact to the biggest amount of people if we can do something about that. I mean, the seat in my car is very comfortable, but it's extremely heavy and it's got 18-way adjustment. So that's not the solution. But these new materials that are going to go away from this kind of one-size-fits-all, something that's a material that's conformal, give you more comfort in the future with the constraint of weight and space that we're always going to have.
Thanks, Craig.
Can I offer a slightly contrary opinion? I'm not saying I disagree with what's been said, but in recent times, I think the pressure in the economy to differentiate on pitch and potentially get more seats in, particularly in narrow bodies, has encouraged a thinner but more ergonomic design that also allows better leg room for the person behind, to put more of the structure into the center of the seat and give more knee space, which is always a particular problem in a tighter pitch. And I think also we need to bear in mind that we're not all the same shape and size. So these seats, if you try and be clever and over design them and put headrests in, a headrest for an average person is a pain between the shoulder blades for a big guy. So I think it's really important to keep the seat design simple and ergonomic. And I think it is very, very hard to differentiate. But if you try and do too much, it's good for one person and bad for another.
Yeah, I agree, but I'm thinking really of doing far less, so you have a much simpler membrane as opposed to a heavily contoured cushion with a headrest on it, so that the hammock, if you like, is going to absorb the shape of various people, be it a very small person or a very large one. But yeah, anyway, I think we're all in agreement in principle.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Alan. It's a really, really challenging design problem. And I do agree that on the shorter pitches, there have been lots of innovations with thinner seat backs, which have really helped to increase legroom. I think the next level, though, is genuinely, the focus there has often been about decreasing discomfort rather than trying to find a breakthrough which really introduces improvements to comfort. And that is tricky to do, particularly as the margins are so small now on economy seats. It's not a huge driver for seat manufacturers to focus their R&D efforts on, because they make far more money from premium economy and business class and first class suites. So they're not going to invest huge amounts on economy seats. So it probably takes startups or mavericks or independents from the market to really try and introduce innovation in this space. And the challenge for them is getting scale and doing that in what is a fiercely competitive market.
Yeah, those guys are good at bringing other benefits by taking weight out, for example. And keeping the design simple and the manufacturing costs low. And then they offer a very competitively priced product as well, which is, and low weight, which is always attractive to airlines. But sometimes I think we get a little bit distracted by putting the wrong features into seats. I mentioned headrests. You know, one thing, the area that you really want the support is in the nape of your neck and not your head. Give profile of a person. So if we could get a little bit more clever about the ergonomics and what actually comfort means rather than what we perceive it to be, we might progress.
Great.
Should there be some collaboration between the aviation industry and the automotive industry here? And I'm very surprised actually that the automotive industry has not really advanced seating comfort, or in the way that we're discussing at the moment. They're normally ahead on many things when it comes to innovation, but they have the resource, and their market is obviously a lot stronger than the aviation scene is at the moment. Perhaps some kind of collaboration with the automotive people would help to resolve this problem. Bearing in mind the multiples for seating in automotive is far greater than it is in aviation as well, so they would have some significant gains from it.
Yeah. Well, James, and thank you everyone. I think we must wrap up there, otherwise we'll be eating into the other breakouts time. But I think we could carry on talking in this group for a long time about these issues. It's been really interesting. I hope that people found it interesting too, and hopefully we can get more of these in the future to get these guys together to talk about these issues. I think it's been really valuable. So thank you again to everyone. We'll keep the mural boards open post event, so we'll keep on developing those and we'll be in touch. But else, please follow the link to the next panel set of panels, which have started now. So thank you very much, Martin, Alan, Craig, Ben, and James. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks,
everyone.
Thanks,
Will.
Will.
Thanks, gents.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Cheers, guys.
take care.